Shocking new twists in the death of teen cheerleader Anna Kepner aboard a Carnival cruise ship. Federal authorities remain tight-lipped as her stepbrother slipped into a Miami courtroom, his 16-year-old face hidden from cameras. But now, newly filed court documents introduce a chilling word that changes everything: murder. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. To this point, Anna Kepner's 16-year-old stepbrother's case appears to be going through the juvenile court system per WTVJ television. He was flanked by his lawyer. He had his hood on his face. He kept his head down. One reporter even asked him point blank, did he kill his stepsister? And he didn't respond to that. Now, we're not naming the boy, the 16-year-old right now, because he is considered a juvenile. Now, we'll talk a little bit about what could change that here in just a moment. It has been really hard to get any information from the official channels since Anna Kepner's body was taken off of that Carnival cruise ship named the Horizon after it returned to port in Miami back in November. The FBI, they're the ones investigating this. They have not said much beyond the fact that they are investigating. Cruise ships, the reason that this is playing out in the federal court system is that is their jurisdiction. It is believed that this happened in international waters. Now, we've received a lot of the information in this case, as we've been reporting on it since late last year, because of a custody battle that has been taking place involving the mom of that 16-year-old who is reportedly a suspect in Anna Kepner's death, her custody battle with her ex-husband. Now, that mom, her name is Chantel Kepner, and she is Anna Kepner's stepmom. And for the first time, we are now seeing the term murder used in court documents that we just acquired in the last several hours. Now, before we unpack what those documents say, I do want to lay out for you how we got to this point, because there is a lot to talk about. So we're going to go back to November 8th of last year. That's when we received word that there was a body being taken off of a Carnival cruise ship, a ship that had just returned to port in Miami after a week-long cruise in the Caribbean. Now, this is video from WSVN TV reporter Sheldon Fox of Kepner's body reportedly being taken off of that ship. After it returned to Miami, that body was then taken to the Miami-Dade County Medical Examiner's Office. Now, you typically do not see violence aboard cruise ships like this. And that is part of the reason it is receiving so much attention month after month as we are looking for new information in this case. Now, this is the death certificate for Anna Kepner. It was first obtained by Fox News. It does not list her cause of death, but it says that her body has been cremated. Her memorial service was held in Titusville, Florida. That's her hometown. It's east of Orlando. Now, the medical examiner did rule her manner of death homicide. ABC News has been in touch with family members, and they have told them that Anna died of what's called an arm bar. It's like a chokehold across her neck. Now, Anna Kepner was an 18-year-old. She was from Titusville, Florida, just a couple hours north of Miami. She was on a Carnival cruise as a member of a blended family. This was a cruise that was supposed to be the celebration of a family coming together, the start of a new tradition. Anna's dad, Chris Kepner, married a woman named Chantel Hudson, who now goes by Chantel Kepner. Now, Chantel has kids, including that boy who is 16 years old, only identified in court records as TH to protect his identity. And that boy is reportedly a suspect in Anna Kepner's murder. Now, Anna was about to graduate high school, and she had some big plans. She was going to potentially join the military. Her hope was one day she could return home and serve her community as a member of law enforcement. That's what her family have told media outlets. Her grandparents told ABC News that this cruise, it was going well. You had a total of 9 family members on board. They described Anna's relationship with her stepbrother as 2 peas in a pod. But now, with the details we're learning, that characterization is certainly being questioned by others who say this boy allegedly had a dark side to him. Now, 2 days prior to Kepner's body being taken off of the ship, November 6th, Anna told family members at dinner that she wasn't feeling well, so she was going to go back to her room. Her grandparents said that she had braces, they were tight, and they were bothering her, so she was just going to call it a night. The next day, the family says they were getting together for breakfast, and that's when they heard a medical emergency on board. And that call went out for a room number that sounded very familiar. It was Anna's room. According to the Daily Mail, it was around 11 that morning that a maid entered Anna's stateroom and made a horrifying discovery. 18-year-old Anna was dead, and her body was reportedly covered with life jackets and wrapped in a blanket stuffed under her bed. The ship then returned to port the next day on November 8th. And that's when we see Kepner's body being taken off of the ship in that WSVN video. Now, since then, the information that's come out about the investigation, it has been limited to say the least. In their interview with ABC News, Anna's grandparents said that the only other person seen going into Anna's room was her 16-year-old stepbrother. And that stepbrother, TH, in court records, reportedly said he doesn't remember the details about what allegedly happened inside that room. According to ABC, the 16-year-old said, quote, in his own words, says he does not remember what happened, end quote. That is according to Anna's grandmother in that interview.
The older child, who's approximately 16 years of age, is a suspect in the death of the stepchild, an 18-year-old daughter that was in the same room.
Now, this is a moment from a custody hearing involving Anna's stepmom, the biological mom of that boy who's now reportedly accused of murder. The case is unrelated to the investigation into Anna's death, but this custody battle has become central in following this story because it involves people and children who are members of this blended family who were on this cruise. And even though the federal system is not releasing information, we are learning new information through this custody case. Now, Chantel Hudson, she has been in this custody battle with her ex-husband named Thomas Hudson for more than a year. And in the wake of reports about the 16-year-old boy being charged with murder, Thomas just filed a new motion for custody of the boy's sibling. Now, according to the document, the lawyer for Thomas Hudson says, quote, there has been a significant and unanticipated change in circumstances that requires the immediate transfer of sole time sharing and parental responsibility for the party's minor child, BH. Now, it goes on to say, in short, according to social media from the Kepner family, the respondent/mother's stepdaughter, and we believe in this redacted part is where they say the name Anna Kepner, and murdered by respondent/mother and petitioner/father's son, TH, while respondent/mother and her current husband had sole supervision of the children while on a cruise. Then the document lays out for the first time, quote, according to social media from the Kepner family, on February 3rd, 2026, the petitioner, father's son, TH, was charged by the United States Attorney in the Southern District of Florida for the redacted and homicide of Anna Kepner. Now, it's unclear what was redacted in that sentence. We do know, according to ABC News, there was no evidence of drugs in Anna's system, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. Thomas Hudson says that he should receive full custody of their other minor child, BH, not just because of the homicide charge, but because of the alleged parenting practices of Anna Kepner's stepmom and her dad on the cruise. Now, Thomas Hudson is accusing them of allowing minors to drink on the cruise and of having, quote, inappropriate living arrangements. It has been reported that Kepner was sharing a room with her stepbrother on this cruise. Thomas Hudson also accuses Chantel Hudson of, quote, medication mismanagement. Now, this could be very important in this case moving forward. It has been brought up in this custody battle before that there was not medication given on the schedule it should have been, allegedly, to that boy, TH, on this cruise. This is an exchange from a previous custody hearing involving Chantel, where she makes a shocking admission. Listen to this.
As far as does he have any diagnoses?
He has ADHD.
And how long has he been diagnosed with ADHD?
About 3 or 4 years.
Those after your separation from Mr. Hudson, correct?
About that timeline, yes.
And does he receive medication for his ADHD?
He does.
And what medication was he on for his ADHD?
Methylphenidate.
Would you pronounce that for me and spell it, Pam, if you know?
Methylphenidate, I don't know the spelling.
Okay.
The name brand's Concerta. That
Okay.
helps.
Thank you.
And how often would you take that medication?
Every morning.
And did he take the medication on the cruise with him?
Yes. He also takes a nighttime pill as well.
The same medication?
No, it's clonidine.
What is that for?
Insomnia.
Did you hold on to the medications?
Yes.
Did you make sure he took his medications every day?
He took his morning pill every day, and he missed 2 doses of his clonidine at night.
You held on to the clonidine as well?
Mhm.
That's yes?
Yes, sorry.
And what do you mean he missed the doses? What happened there?
He went to bed before he got it. He was already asleep.
Including that Thursday night?
No, Thursday night he didn't get it. I fell asleep before he did.
So just to make sure I understand, ma'am, while on the cruise, he missed taking that nighttime medication twice. One of the nights was because he fell asleep prior to taking
Yes.
the medication, and the other night was the night before
Correct. I fell asleep before he
he
did.
fell asleep.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
he did not get the medication the night.
Yeah, he didn't come and
before
ask
the
for it.
incident.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Now, the 16-year-old reportedly has ADHD and takes 2 medications. One's called Concerta, takes that in the morning, and then there's a nighttime pill for insomnia called clonidine. It's unclear if any of that or the lack of taking those medications played a role in what happened to Anna Kepner. In the most recent filing, Thomas Hudson also calls out the Kepner family for allegedly saying they, quote, want nails in the coffin of the stepbrother, and also they, quote, want him buried. Now, this, according to Thomas Hudson, was seen in social media posts made by the Kepner family. Thomas Hudson says it is not right for the 16-year-old sibling to be living with the Kepner family, and he also claims because he lives in another county that he can cut BH off from the media scrutiny of this case. Now, as for the boy identified as TH, who is now reportedly facing a homicide charge in federal court, everything in his case is sealed. That's because he is a minor, and that appears to be the way he is being prosecuted to this point. Joining us now to talk more about what could happen next is Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. Always good to see you, Dave. Thanks for being with us on Law and Crime.
Thank you, Chris.
You know, the big question I think a lot of people have in this case is, why is it as a minor? He's 16. We see so many cases. I mean, there's a case in Pittsburgh right now, not a federal case, but the kid's 11 and he's facing a murder charge being tried as an adult. And yet it seems like in this case, you know, this boy is very much almost being shielded and protected, some could say, at 16 years old, though it appears he's been charged with murder, according to these court filings. Why is that?
Well, the federal system is different than the state system where I come from. And the federal system does have a lot of protections until the young person is transferred into adult court. So I do think that day could still come. There are proceedings done under wraps. And once that person goes through the federal process of getting officially designated as someone who's going to be tried in adult court, it'll be secret until then. Now, I do think that eventually you're going to see a lot more here because this is such a high profile, awful case of alleged murder that, and it's not like it's a 12-year-old here who did this. This is someone who's close to the age of majority that I do think that he will be tried as an adult, but apparently it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, you go all the way back to November 8th when this story first began. And then here we are in 2026, and we're kind of still waiting to see that happen potentially. But even now, just being charged, what do you make of that time frame? Because this was one where he's the only one reportedly who was seen going into this room. We know that she passed away from, some sort of armbar chokehold, that it appeared to have been a murder case. But however many months it's been, like just now we're hearing that on February 3rd, he was charged with murder.
Yeah, well, this is different than in the state of Florida. So because this is a federal court, the prosecutor doesn't just direct file a 16-year-old into adult court for a capital offense. You can do that in the state of Florida. As a former state attorney, you can direct file, and the prosecutor has immense discretion. In the federal system, it's much harder. So first, every case involving a minor must begin as a juvenile delinquency proceeding. It's the default. And so that's why you're seeing this slow walk here. And then you have to file a motion within the U.S. Attorney's Office there for the Southern District of Florida to transfer the juvenile to adult court. And it's not automatic. So you have to certify that there's a substantial federal interest, and that just begins the process, because unlike Florida's process, the judge is the gatekeeper, a federal judge, and here apparently it's Judge Beth Bloom will make the final call. The judge must find that transferring this 16-year-old to adult court is in the interest of justice after a formal hearing. So there's a whole process. It's slower, but eventually I think it's going to happen.
And he was allowed, because there was this scene that played out back in February, or earlier this month, where he's seen in court, media surrounding him. He goes in, he's covering his face, but then he also comes out and gets to go home. I don't know what his bond was. I know that that's also, it feels like part of the having a sealed case like this. Why is it, like, even if it's a murder charge, I mean, are you surprised that he would be allowed to go home, where in so many cases we'll see people, I mean, certainly in adult court, it's rare for someone to be able to get bond in a murder case?
Yeah. Well, remember, this is federal court. It's different than in Florida, which is very tough on crime, and you would keep someone behind bars beforehand because they could be a threat to the community. They could be a flight risk. The federal system has a presumption of release. And so the law says that a juvenile must be released to their parents or guardians unless a judge specifically finds that detention is required to secure his arrival in court, which is really about the flight risk, or that detention is required to protect the juvenile or others, meaning that he's a danger to the community. So if the judge hasn't found him to be a flight risk, I don't think he's a flight risk, and thinks this is a one-off, like this is something where he was off his meds and he did something because he had opportunity, he was off his meds, and it was just something that was between the two of them instead of just a random act of violence, then they're not going to find him a danger to the community, and so they're going to let him go home. And also keep in mind, we have a lack of federal juvenile facilities. That's another reason why he wouldn't be kept, because where do you keep him? So I do think that this was to be expected, that he's allowed to go home, at least for now. That could change. Conditions of release could be altered at some point.
And there's so much we don't know because the case is sealed. But then we have this custody hearing, custody case that's been playing out for a long time. And the medication part of it, his mom said that she did not give him medication. I guess there's a nighttime pill that he needs to take for insomnia. How could that factor into the criminal case that's playing out if he was on some sort of medication? I don't know if he was in the custody hearing, they said ADHD and insomnia. I don't know if he's diagnosed with anything else, but the fact that if he didn't receive the medication he should have had at night, how could that factor into a murder case like this?
Well, this is going to be a critical part of the defense. I think they're going to try to argue what's called diminished capacity, or maybe involuntary intoxication. It's like, this is not to say he didn't do it. This is to say he didn't have the mens rea, the mental intent here, the intent to commit premeditated murder. That they're going to say it's something less than first degree premeditated murder because of the mother's failure to provide or manage the medication. So, they could say, well, he blacked out. And they could say, well, the mother was negligent, and so she should get some of the blame here. But I just, we see this a lot in court. It's the medication defense, and I understand it because it's what the defense has. It's not like they could say he didn't do it. I mean, pretty obvious he's the one who did it. Sorry, the evidence to me is overwhelming. Yeah. But as a prosecutor, you focus on the physicality of the crime. So for example, if you have a migraine or an ADHD imbalance, it doesn't teach someone how to apply a lethal bar hold to choke someone out. That's not something that happens because, you have a little, medication imbalance. These are coordinated, purposeful actions that suggest some clarity of mind, not a medical blackout. You can only blame mom for so much. Maybe you can sue her civilly, but blaming mom's not going to let you get away with murder.
How do you as a prosecutor take that on? Like where, how much do you have to prepare, especially in a case like this where he was the only other person apparently that went into the room? We know how she died. It wasn't something that, according to everything we have, like she couldn't have done it to herself. So, it's very strong case for the prosecution in that way. Like how much of a concern would the medication argument be for you if you were the prosecutor on this?
Well, keep an eye on the toxicology report. If the young man's blood work comes back and shows a lack of prescribed medication or the presence of alcohol, remember the father is saying, well, he mixed alcohol. He was underage, but he was drinking. Again, shifting the blame to the parents. The alcohol plus the meds could have created this reaction. But that, as a prosecutor, would only get you concerned because you could lose the top charge, first-degree premeditated murder. But I don't think you have to worry about him going free, because I do think that he's still subject to a conviction on a lesser charge. And maybe that is the appropriate result here. But ultimately, you want to do justice for this poor victim. And I just think as a prosecutor, the evidence is what it is. I mean, he had every chance to avoid this. He actually went back to the room with her and then voluntarily put her in some sort of chokehold. And afterwards, he said he doesn't remember it. But, this kind of guy had been alleged by, remember, her ex-boyfriend, the victim's ex-boyfriend,
Right,
for being creepy. And it seems like this is a guy who, it was just a one-time blackout because of meds. It sounds like he had some real issues over time.
How long does it typically take? Like now that he's been charged, and according to the custody case, it was on February 3rd, he was charged with murder. And at this point, as a juvenile, like how long does the process typically take? And I know it can be a long time to get to him being charged as an adult. Well,
The federal system can move very slowly, and I don't have a time frame on it, but it would be something that will frustrate all of us, because this case has been sitting out there for so long, and we're like, what's going on? Instead, we have to read the tea leaves from a separate civil family case. So I don't have a time frame on it. It depends also. The defendant could invoke speedy trial, but after he's charged, so we don't know if that's happened yet. So I just don't have that time frame yet.
And if he is, let's just say, and I know this is a big leap because we have a long way to go, but if he is charged as an adult, if he's found guilty as an adult, I mean, especially on a charge of murder, I mean, is that, a life sentence? 16 years old, you do this, and then you're going to be in a federal penitentiary for the rest of your life?
Well, there are rules on that. There are rules that would allow you to get a reassessment after a certain period of time. Now, first off, the death penalty is ineligible for a juvenile. That's unconstitutional. So that's off the table. The court generally loses jurisdiction over him at the age of 21, which is why you don't want to keep him in juvenile court. Wouldn't that be an injustice if he's able to be released after 21 because the court no longer has jurisdiction over him? That would be wrong. So I do think he'll be tried as an adult. And if he's found guilty of murder, he can get life. But there are certain benefits for being a young person. So for second-degree murder, the base level offense is 38, which even for a first-time offender can get you about 19 to 24 years. So if the judge finds that the murder was exceptionally heinous, then they can depart towards a life sentence. But generally, he would be able to get out while he still has plenty of good years left.
And then from the prosecution standpoint, how important if you have the forensic evidence that, he was the only other person in the room and this is what happened, like how important is the motive in a case like this?
Well, motive is important because it shows intention, nectar mens rea. It wasn't, if he had a motive, then that sort of eliminates the whole diminished capacity defense that hey, I'm sorry, I blacked out. I didn't know what I was doing. No, you had clear motive. Maybe it was to cover up a secret. We don't know at this point. But I do think that prosecutors are going to flesh this out, and we'll know more once the secrecy is lifted from this case. And, when you are a juvenile, you do get certain advantages I mentioned before that adults don't have. So not only are the sentencing guidelines in your favor, but also, unless you're convicted of first-degree murder, but if it's second-degree murder, then you will probably get out of prison before you die. But also, there's this case, Miller versus Alabama, that said that a federal court cannot impose a mandatory sentence of life without parole without going through certain things about the young person. You got to look to his past. You got to look to certain characteristics, things that adults don't get. So under Miller, the juvenile will be able to make his case that, he shouldn't get a life sentence. You need to go through all these different factors that you don't have to do in an adult case. And even if he does get convicted of second-degree murder, like I said, the sentencing guidelines wouldn't necessarily even give him life. So I expect that this young man will get a second lease on life at some point, but he'll be convicted of something that'll keep him incarcerated for a couple decades.
And then just lastly, what do you make of this custody case that's been going on, where it seems like, you have this father who is the biological dad of TH, who's this 16-year-old now a suspect, and then the father of another child who is also in the care of the Kepners, and he's pointing and saying, well, my son is accused of murder and is living with my ex-wife. I should then have custody of H. There's a lot of layers to this story, in this family. I mean, so many people involved, but just what do you make of not only just the information coming out of it, but then that playing out kind of parallel to a very serious criminal federal investigation?
Yeah. So the father here is filing for emergency sole custody of there's a 9-year-old daughter here, and he's claiming failure to supervise. He says that since the mother allowed TH, the 16-year-old, and 18-year-old Anna to share a room without supervision, and he says that this young man had some twisted obsession, his words, not mine, and history of volatility, that it shows that the mother should not be able to have custody over the 9-year-old daughter. So it is very interesting. And what's important here, I think, is that it allows all of us to see things we wouldn't be able to see otherwise. We're talking about seeing a civil case, which in Florida is wide out in the open. And even though it involves juveniles, we're getting to see the pleadings and learning about things of the criminal case that we otherwise wouldn't. So I think that's what makes it important here. I do think in the custody case, the father is essentially handing the feds a gift, not only the media a gift, but the feds a gift, because he's alleging that the mother knew the boy was at risk. And so that sort of undermines the whole case of, well, this thing was just a one-time thing. He blacked out because of medication. No, you had a series of events over time that led to this, where the mother knew about this. And the father's testimony is creating this whole timeline of red flags that the FBI is definitely adding to their file.
Yeah. And it's again, a gift to the media in some ways. I mean, I know it's a very serious case, but we would not have access to this information if this was just strictly coming from the federal court system, because everything's sealed to this point.
True crime just got darker. Catch the full episode on the link above. Subscribe to @Southern Sin today and hit the notification bell for more live original episodes Wednesdays at 8 p.m.